Discover the best in local business news with a subscription to the IBJ and Inside Indiana Business. For a limited time, try us out for just $1 a week for 8 weeks. Claim this limited time offer now at ibj.com/trial offer.
This is Inside Indiana Business Radio for the afternoon of Friday, March 27th, 2026. I'm Abriana Herron. A group of senior design students at Trine University is working to help a disabled veteran get back to a hobby that he loves. Chester Evett has been an avid hunter since he was a child, but he sustained injuries to his chest and left arm during the Gulf War that impacted his ability to use a bow. While he was still able to hunt, another injury suffered 3 years ago left him unable to draw. The Trine students are developing a device to allow Evett to hold a bow again. Evett said the process of designing the device was chaotic at first.
Because they were learning me. I had the darndest time understanding a lot of I couldn't articulate what they wanted back in an answer.
Evett says his initial goal was to shoot his bow again, but now he has an even loftier goal: participate in archery competitions for disabled veterans. TeenWorks will expand into St. Joseph County this year, launching its first summer employment program in South Bend. The Indiana-based nonprofit plans to begin interviewing teens in April, with the 6-week program starting June 17th. The initiative targets underserved youth, providing paid work opportunities with local nonprofit partners. Participants also receive meals and transportation during the program. Daviess Community Hospital has secured a pair of relocation grants through a regional workforce development initiative to hire an ultrasound technologist and a speech-language pathologist. The grants from Choose Southern Indiana strengthen the hospital's ability to attract and retain healthcare professionals, the hospital said in a news release. The program provides up to $5,000 in relocation assistance for individuals who recently graduated from an Indiana educational institution to relocate to eligible southern Indiana counties. Inside Indiana Business Radio on Demand is made possible by the following.
Thanks for listening to this IBJ Media podcast. You're probably going to remember this ad. Do you know why? Podcast advertising works. 85% of listeners recalled hearing an ad during a podcast, and 70% of podcast listeners have acted after hearing an ad. So whether you're looking to be heard across the entire IBJ Media Podcast Network, sponsor one of our shows, or just start with a 30-second ad, IBJ Media can help. Contact advertise at ibj.com to learn more.
Legislation proposed Thursday by U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders and U.S. Representative Greg Casar could make it harder for the Chicago Bears to choose Indiana in a race to determine where the NFL franchise will play future games. Inside Indiana Business's Gary Dick has more.
Sanders and Casar say their bill could protect fans from losing teams and protect taxpayers from being extorted for huge subsidies by threat of relocation, in part by giving communities the chance to buy teams that are proposing to leave their home state or metro area. Indiana Governor Mike Braun called the proposal a, quote, crazy idea and said in a statement the legislation is an example of why, quote, nothing gets done in D.C. It's not clear whether the proposal has any chance of passage, given the U.S. Senate and House are controlled by Republicans. But the bill authors are leaning into frustration many Americans feel about the money that communities put into sports stadiums, in part to appease professional sports team owners. Sanders said in a statement that, quote, the American people are sick and tired of billionaires threatening to move the sports teams they own to different states unless they get hundreds of millions of corporate welfare to build new stadiums, end quote. The Chicago Bears currently play home games at Soldier Field along Lake Michigan in Chicago, but the owners want a new stadium that will provide more amenities to fans and players and create lucrative opportunities for other events. The Bears expected to make a decision about a stadium location in the coming weeks or perhaps months. This is Gary Dick for Inside Indiana Business Radio.
Grace College officially launched its Gordon Center for Enterprise Development during a student entrepreneurial showcase Wednesday. The new center is designed to expand entrepreneurship opportunities for students, faculty, alumni, and the surrounding community. It also aims to apply biblical principles to enterprise development. The Gordon Center is one of Grace College's 4 centers of excellence. Fresh grass now stretches across parts of downtown Attica where historic buildings once stood. City leaders and local developers say these changes are part of a broader effort to address safety concerns, preserve what remains of the historic district, and attract new growth to the area. In 2020, downtown Attica was named one of Indiana Landmark's 10 most endangered sites. Since then, 7 historic buildings have been demolished, way more than the city wanted, Attica Mayor Larry Grant said in an interview with Inside Indiana Business. The decision ultimately came down to public safety and funding.
We couldn't even go in and salvage things out of that we wanted to salvage because structurally they just weren't viable to go in.
Local development officials say more than $7 million in revitalization work is expected for downtown Attica in 2026, with certain projects to be completed in 2027. I'm Abriana Herron for Inside Indiana Business Radio on Demand.
Off the Record with Indiana's 250 most influential business and community leaders is a podcast that peels back the curtain on Indiana's most respected leaders, one episode at a time. Go beyond the headlines and hear the stories of grit and innovation that shape these leaders. Do you want to know who's driving our state forward? This is a must listen. Subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts or at ibjpodcast.com.
Thanks for listening to this IBJ Media podcast. You're probably going to remember this ad. Do you know why? Podcast advertising works. 85% of listeners recalled hearing an ad during a podcast, and 70% of podcast listeners have acted after hearing an ad. So whether you're looking to be heard across the entire IBJ Media Podcast Network, sponsor one of our shows, or just start with a 30-second ad, IBJ Media can help. Contact advertise at ibj.com to learn more.